We want to get back to the No Kings protest right now at Daley Plaza and bring in Phil Andrew. He's our CBS News Chicago security expert, former FBI agent as well. Phil, it's always good to see you. Thank you for your time and your insight. Let's start with, I think, the big question of what's happening downtown from a security standpoint, and that is, what is your concern, if you have one, or your biggest concern with a crowd this size?
Well, the most important thing is that everybody be concerned about safety. That these protests and these demonstrations are absolutely guaranteed within our Constitution, and people's ability to express themselves must be protected. But it's really everybody's responsibility, the city, the police department, and even those out demonstrating, to be mindful of protecting themselves and looking out for each other. So if people see something that they see out of order, or they see someone that is agitating or moving toward violence or destruction, they can sometimes help create a kind of a culture, an atmosphere where that's not acceptable. But it's very important that folks identify the things that they see as out of the ordinary and share that with the local police department. Chicago Police Department is very used to this. They had advance notice so that a lot of preparation went into place. But as they start moving, and if they move in directions that are unanticipated, that can strain the ability for law enforcement to keep the crowd safe.
What goes into the planning for an event this size, Phil? Because you have officers on bikes, you have some officers in squads, you have some different larger vehicles. They use these to try to encourage the crowd to stay on the path. But at the same time, the police have to think about contingency plans. What if? And there are a lot of what ifs to consider when the group this size gets on the move.
There's no question that there's a lot of dynamics to planning for this, but they have the kind of resources in place to do this, and they have additional officers nearby, and they have counterterrorism teams available should someone, the unthinkable, that somebody tries to take advantage of this. So that's why it's very important that those demonstrating are also conscious and communicative. So as the crowd and those leading these demonstrations, that they be in good communication with those officers on site, particularly those white shirted officers, the senior officers, the sergeants, and the command staff, because they're in the best position to communicate that if there is different movement or there is activity or motion that they need to be aware of so they can respond to it quickly.
It's interesting, Phil, having walked through this crowd as I came into work today, Dave Savini mentioned it in his report. Not to say this is a joyful gathering, but I do think it is a happy gathering of like-minded people who feel the same way. You see the smiles on the people's faces here. And we mentioned, too, a lot of kids in the family. This feels like something that parents wanted to bring their children to so that they could say they were here and a part of it. And I'm just going to sort of guess here that, again, my feeling, and this is certainly not anything other than that, the other night, earlier this week, when the protests sort of went south, it felt like it was volatile. It was more spontaneous. The crowd was moving in many different directions. This seems to me to be a more organized group and could bode well for what's ahead this afternoon.
Well, I think you're hitting it right there, that any time that there is some opportunity to anticipate and plan and then coordinate, that all bodes well for safety. But I think you're right, too, that there is a real pent-up frustration and anxiety. And when folks come together and are able to see like-minded folks and be able to express themselves, one, that is absolutely part of the values of our country. But two, it's actually really positive. You know, the ability to go out into the marketplace and share ideas and express them and get a sense to the response to them is very important. It's very important in our American values, but it's also important to the psyche that this is a very American activity, the ability of folks to speak up. And I think that's contributing to what you see there, a little bit of joy and an atmosphere of we're doing this as a group. There's a sense of unity. Because one thing I'll tell you is that in all my years of crisis management and the work that we do at PAX Group going into crisis zones and working with people in crisis, unity and connection and relationship, those are the critical elements. And I think you're seeing that play out today.
Yeah, one of the more popular chants that you hear at these protests is, "This is what democracy looks like." And whether you agree with what these folks are gathering for today or not, it is indeed what democracy looks like, as you point out, Phil, and the ability in a country to do this and gather and demonstrate and make your voices heard. That is really the foundation of what it's all about. Moving ahead, I think what I've taken away from some of the protests we've seen here in Chicago is the response from CPD, which you talk with people who are at these events, and many of them worry about the agitators. There are people who clearly come in and are bent on creating problems to make a scene. And it seems to me, Phil, like CPD's policy on this has been to try to extract people who are perceived as agitators, to get them out of the crowd so as to distract from the bigger group and the bigger message.
That's right. And that's where that very important element of these demonstration organizers and the demonstrators themselves recognizing what's unusual, recognizing those that are being disruptive and taking this to another level of violence, and actually bringing that to the attention of the law enforcement there. They're absolutely there to protect these First Amendment rights and support them. They're going to need that kind of collaboration in that environment, because it is those agitators, those folks that are coming with the intent of trying to exploit these moments or cause harm, that law enforcement is looking for. They're well trained in this and they have the capability, but they're always going to need the community's support in identifying that and responding to it.
Having worked in other cities, Phil, this is an observation I made a short time ago, and it was obvious to me when I got to Chicago, compared to other cities where officers showed up for events like this and protests already in riot gear. Almost, to me, it seems like in Chicago, the police just show up. They're on their bikes. They don't have the helmets on. Now, when it gets to a point where things are out of control, they do bring them in. But I think initially, at least, it seems to be less combative when people who are protesting see folks who are just on a bicycle in uniform.
Absolutely. And I think the Chicago Police Department has a long history, some of it, unsuccessfully, in the way that it responded to protests, and they've learned a lot. And this is absolutely the best practice, to be showing up and recognizing that these are First Amendment demonstrations, and to let that be a democratic celebration, but also being mindful, as always, that there is the potential and there remains levels of risk that they have to be vigilant for. But elevating that without seeing that risk and without having any intelligence to support it really escalates unnecessarily and really can have a chilling effect on the democratic demonstration that you're seeing right now.